Hello folks and welcome to our game today. It's basically the Offaly celebration day. I was worried that you wouldn't show up on the show today after the Leinster under-20 title win last night and you just have disappeared up your own arse with pride.
No, I was always going to be here. I tell you what else is here. Can you hear that? We have been and over. Stop, Shayla. Absolutely dynamite. Yeah, it was brilliant. We're started with it now for a good while. So last night was just brilliant. It was on the terrace and it was just brilliant to be stuck in the middle of it. Yeah, something special, and there's something special brewing as well, which is great. Like, it's not, we'd hang our hat on a good group. We would absolutely hang our hat on a good group, and this is an outstanding group. And you can just get behind them. Skill wise, they're a brilliant team, but effort wise, they just, like, everything was against them last night. They were down to 14 men. They were under pressure, and they just pulled through. And like leave it to Screeney. Like, the size of him, Shane, and just what he can do. He scored a point. He must have been 9 yards out from the end line, I'd say, off the left. He's like, yeah, like someone asked me last night on Twitter, I think it was Detox actually, he said, like, what player would you compare him to? Like, to me, I've been saying it all along, he's a Joe Dean style, impish style player. He's always able to create a yard, and the thing I like most about him is his work rate without the ball. He's actually faster without. Do you remember that flick he got in the centre back? Just like, I know it didn't go over, but it was a real it just sucked a bit of momentum out of Wexford, and it had to get really down and dirty, and Offaly had to get really down and dirty last night, and they were able to do it and just pass the test with flying colours last night. Yeah, it
was brilliant stuff. Like Cormac Egan, he's now got Leinster under-20 titles in both codes.
Yeah,
obviously, football was 2 years ago.
There's not too many. Like, think about how many have done that. Like, even outside of Offaly, I think Ollie Minnock has done it in Offaly in the late 70s. But like, outside of Offaly, like, would it be a Cork man maybe that might have done it? Would Aidan Walsh maybe have done it?
Barry Cullinan won All Irelands in both codes.
That's right. Yeah. But they had to play no games to get there, Shane, on the hurling shirt. Semi-final, final. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Hey, they're gone into Leinster now and they can't get past the quarter-final.
Well, there you go.
I'm only having a veil.
They were missing a few players though because of the senior rule, weren't they?
They were missing one player. In fairness,
Liam Collins, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, the comments are flying in here. Do you not have brains freeze from all the icebergers? So anyone who doesn't know, before when Verney was celebrating the big win, doesn't drink, so he had a full box of icebergers.
No, that was actually drowning my sorrows. That was drowning my sorrows,
okay.
And I felt it. I felt as hungover as any member of the squad had said the next day after him.
Yeah, congrats, Mick. Brilliant scenes. Crowd was brilliant throughout, says Pa. Okay, we're back, says A. Sully, 180. Well, there's no Burr players starting now, so I don't know how back you are in Burr. I don't really mess.
We had a starter the whole way through, but he pulled up with the hammer against Dublin. So hopefully he'll be back for the final. Not sure. There's different talk about when the final could be. So just great to be there. And sure, we're already massive underdogs going in against Cork, but these boys won't fear anyone. I can tell you that.
Yeah, Joe Butler says, great win by Offaly last night. A lot of skill displayed with a typical never say die Offaly attitude. Brilliant to see Offaly do so well, especially with 14 men for nearly all the second half. What was the buzz like in there?
I goosebumps here even talking about it. Like, I swear to God, the amount of people, you know, it's the same when Tipperary win or anything like that. The amount of people you see on the pitch that you just haven't seen in forever. And you don't even need to say anything. Do you know what I mean? Someone got a snap of me last night. I think it was hugging Colin Cummins, who's involved in the Offaly County Board, and Dygan is there as well. And there's all just, you know, you just meet people, and there's a great outpouring of emotion that only the GA can kind of bring. And it's funny, Adam Screeney's interview after, he referenced it, and I kind of said it to you a few times since. Maybe the best thing in the world that ever happened to this group was not winning that minor All Ireland. Maybe he said even like it took them a few months to get over it, but it was, you know, they realised that they had to get back working hard again or whatever. And this is I probably, like, at the start of the campaign, you wouldn't have been expecting Leinster to come out of this. And the fact that you're straight through to a final as well, like, Jesus, there's some carrot there to be in the All-Ireland final. I don't think we've played Cork in any code in a, you know, All-Ireland stages game since 2000 All-Ireland semi-final. Played them in qualifiers and stuff like that, maybe senior level. But like 23 years later, and they've obviously got a brilliant side and they beat Clare the other night. But yeah, it's just brilliant to have it to look forward to.
How are the rest of us supposed to compete with you now?
Jesus, most counties have teams like this coming up the whole time. I think the best thing about it is that there's only 6 of the minors from last year. So that's another 9 players. You know what I mean? We're not just hanging our hat on one team. It's probably 3 years of teams, if you get me. But it was brilliant because we were under the cosh at different stages of the second half, and Keane burned for Wexford. Jeez, he's some game. Like, I was looking at it, and you know when you just see a lad, he's literally in the zone. I was looking at him hitting the freeze, and he wouldn't have the ball shook, and he'd have the fist pump like that. He knew he was on his game. And he was very dangerous. Our half back line that would usually be on top now, he was causing all sorts of trouble there. But like the goal was gas because Conor McGeegan, who you mentioned there, probably not the most skillful hurler in the world, but you don't need 6 forwards that can all have silken touches. You need 2 or 3 guys that will get stuck in. Like how he turned over a couple of balls there. He'd no right to turn over. And go on.
The goal he assisted for Screeney, I really thought he should have gone the other way. I can't remember. Yeah, but he ended up doing he could have done a switch hand pass, which should go straight to Screeney's hand. He did everything wrong as far as I was concerned, but got the ball there. And even Screeney having to take the touch and run to a more narrow angle. It was like, this is the exact wrong way you should try and execute this, but you're like, Screeney's so good. And you know what? I watched the first few minutes there, and I thought before it was delayed, I watched the first half hour, see how that's going, then watch the Champions League semi-final, City against Real. I couldn't turn off the under-20 match. So what a compliment to pay underage hurling.
Just on the goal, I was looking, I think it was Conor Doyle going through the far side, who had a brilliant game.
He was excellent.
Yeah, and you're just looking and thinking, like, if the pass goes to him, like, he just walks the ball into the net. But, and this is no disrespect to Conor Doyle, but if you have Adam Screeney beside you, you just trust them. Even if it's lower percentage, you probably just trust them. And it was just a simple little pass off, and it was just a lovely finish. And as I said, the 2 points from under the terrace in the first half, like, you're just thinking, this lad was out with concussion for the semi-final a week previous, and Breckin Kavanagh, who was out and under pressure coming into this game, he had an unbelievable second half.
Loves to draw a foul, doesn't he? Loves to draw a foul.
He flicked the ball on. Like, it was real smart, because that's beyond his years almost. We were down a man. We needed little bits of cuteness like that. And not being smart with the two of them. Like, they're not exactly the biggest looking fellas on the pitch. They're 2 of the smaller. I'd hazard a guess and say they're the 2 smallest lads on the pitch, and they probably had greatest influence, along with probably Dan Burke, Dan Ravenhill as well. It was just savage display.
Yeah, I go through some of the comments. Adrian McGrath says, great result for Offaly, beautiful skill and composure. Absolutely, especially 14 men the last few minutes. You're thinking, surely they get caught. Leon Keegan, we've been starving the last 23 years. Last night we got fed, Honda faithful. A Sully 180 biting back. 3 Burr boys on the panel, and the great Johnny Pilkington as selector takes more than 15 to be successful. I was only joking. ML89, Jack Glynn and Conor Flaherty have Connacht and Leinster under 20 titles in hurling and football. Don't think that one will be beaten. Yeah, that's quite one. Notable size advantage for Wexford, I thought, from watching on TV. So the skill level and bravery of the Offaly team. Yeah, that is a thing. Like, is it just pure coincidence that this Offaly team is so slight, or is it just because some of them are quite young?
Probably a bit of both, I'd say. Like, they've all
10 are underage next year, aren't they?
10 of the 9 starters, but a heap of lads on the squad as well. We wouldn't be losing that many. But as Screeney said in his interview after, like, you can't wait for next year. You know, if there's an opportunity there, if the door is open, you just power through it as quick as you can. I thought even Leo O'Connor's interview after, like, just on how they he just said, and I think everyone in the county is only probably starting to realise this now. Like, this is, when you just get a sense that a group is a bit different, and you just have full faith in them. And as someone said to me yesterday before the match, the one thing you know about these lads is they'll turn up. And they did turn up, and they always seem to turn up. And whatever I said to you, whatever about the skill, whatever about the silky touches and all that, they just work like dogs, and you cannot buy that.
They're a team. They're impossible not to like. And like, that Wexford team was very good. Martin Furlong says, hard luck to the Wexford lads last night. 2 Leinster final defeats in a row at under 20 is tough to take. However, there's plenty of talent coming through, as shown last night. Richard Hogan says, it's lucky you don't drink, Mick. You would have been missing today. And a couple of people commented on the old haircut there. Championship fade for Stapleton. Fresh fade for the weekend, Shane. Look, it had to happen eventually. It had to go with the big old woolly head like the lad has there.
Nisha Waldron laid the gauntlet down to me. He said, if Offaly win the All-Ireland, I have to get the mullet. And I nearly would, to be honest with you. It'd be worth it.
I actually think it would work for you.
Jesus. I don't know. We'll see. Anything could happen if Offaly win the All-Ireland.
Hughie Kennedy, the bones of the Cork under-20 team are under-20 next year. It's the quality minor team that beat everyone by double digits in 2021 to claim the minor All-Ireland. Great to see them against Offaly in the final up the Rebels. geez, that Cork team was pretty good the other night. And you know what? So were Clare. And I thought Clare were very hard done by late in the game. I can't remember which player it was, but he was moving with the ball. He was absolutely fouled. It was given as a free to Cork. They knocked it over the bar. And when Cork were chasing, was it a 4 or 5 point deficit late on? It was important because if it was a free the other way and it goes over, maybe that was enough to see Clare over the line. But I'm not trying to take away from Cork because, you know, that goal from Michael Mullins, the one where he soloed through, that was, I mean, like, their class team, and Ben Cunningham obviously as well. His performance at Tour de Force.
Shane, the flick near the end when Cork really needed a score, and he just put on the afterburners. I can't think of his name. He passed it off to the midfielder, and it was some brilliant scores. And that you would have to feel very sorry for Clare, because you thought in the third quarter when they kicked on, you think, geez, they're after making the game-winning burst here, maybe, but probably just weren't able to see it out. And maybe the odd decision maybe going against them as well. But Cork are a serious side.
Yeah. Go through a couple of the comments there.
Yeah, Richard Hogan just says serious flick from Cormac Egan for the Screeney goal, and there was a couple of plays he made in really, really tight circumstances. Just really, really cute. He's only come back in playing hurling maybe the last 6 weeks. He was playing with the footballers as well, and I don't know, did he hurl with Tullamore last year?
He wouldn't hurl with UCD as a fresher. I know that.
I don't think he did. I don't think he did play with Tullamore. Do you know what's great as well to see? It's just to see him back fit. Because, you know, since that the under-20 All-Ireland final win 2 years ago, like he probably hasn't played 20 games, I'd say, since then. Do you know what I mean? So good to see him back fit. And it's funny now, while football would probably be his preferred option, you know, if you see a crew that are coming through, and, you know, a rising tide lifts all boats, who knows what side he'll go. He definitely won't be able to play both, but it'd be very, very interesting to see what direction he goes.
There must be hurleys everywhere when you walk around Offaly now, because like
no hurleys, but there's plenty of hurls.
But like you go to an underage match for Offaly now and it's sold out. It's ridiculous. It's stupid.
Yeah, now
in a good way.
I don't know why there was a cap put on Dr. Cullen Park last night, and I'm not sure why, to be honest with you. And it probably should have been somewhere else. And I think there was mitigating circumstance. I think there was potentially an issue with TG Carter not being able to broadcast the game earlier. If it had been in Nolan Park, it would have had to be earlier in case it went extra time, so there'd be adequate light. And then, of course, the fact that it was delayed by 15 minutes, every live broadcaster's nightmare, filling 15 minutes on air. They can't all fill it like me and you talk around for 15 minutes. But yeah, it was mad. Like my mother and sister rang me. I was on the road. I flew in from Dublin, never met a car the whole way. They were in, where were they? They were in Mount Rat at like 5:30, and they had to abandon the car at 7:20 in Carlow, just like blatant abandonment. And they said there was cars just abandoned everywhere. Everyone just abandoned ship. It was one of those mad scenes. Yeah, but they have to know by now that if Offaly are in a final from last year, they're going to travel in numbers. Like Nolan Park was a sellout last year. They must have been the guts of 16,000 in Portage for the Leinster final. So I don't know why that was capped at the capacity it was, and I just hope too many people weren't denied the opportunity to go there. But I tell you what, for the final, which I'd imagine will be in Thurles, I'd say we'll just about Thurles and just about hold us, I'd say.
Yeah, like if that was a sellout for under 20s, like it's just crazy, really, when you think about it. Imagine all those young lads, 17, like Screeney's 17, some of those other lads are 18 and 19, and they're playing in front of, who knows, 30, 40, 45.
Well, as Will O'Cannon said it, and he's right. Like, a load of these guys have played at underage, have played in front of sellout crowds that the senior team wouldn't have got a smell at it. But that isn't it great for those lads when they come through to senior, that imagine like the little swagger that they potentially could bring to the dressing room that is just infectious and rubs off on everybody else. You've seen it in setups where young lads come in, maybe from a successful minor or under 21 team, and they just they make nearly you stick your chest out a bit as well. So hopefully that'll have a bit of a knock-on effect for the Offaly senior team in the years to come.
So can we lock in the mullet? If Offaly win the All-Ireland, you will shave in a mullet, which means skin fade at the side, long at the back, the Mississippi mud flap.
Go on, lock it in. So
okay, you all saw it, folks. You all saw it. ML89 under 20 Offaly football win was more going on a journey. A team who got a mad amount of momentum. Signs on that not too many have made an impact at senior. This Offaly hurling group have a bit more about them. What you'd be able to comment on that better?
Yeah, I suppose a lot of those lads have been hit with injuries, the likes of John Furlong, Morgan Tynan, and that they will still make a big mark at senior level. But this hurling group has probably been well flagged since Tony Forrest and and there's an awful lot, there's a hell of a lot more in them as well. They'll be well minded, but this is a crop that we could get a hell of a lot out of at senior level.
Yeah, get your comments in and let us know who you think is going to win the All-Ireland final now. Is it going to be Offaly? Is it going to be Clare? And why? We're going to hopefully Darach Honan will be knocking on and to chat with us a little bit about Cork against Clare in a few moments. But I suppose just some of the injury stuff here. Pat Ryan says that Robbie O'Flynn, he's going to be out for 6 weeks. So assuming Cork continue and get beyond the Munster Championship, which isn't a done deal at all, they'll be hoping that they get far enough for him to come back. He's had a terrible year with injuries. And Aidan McCarthy, he's touch and go with a quad injury this weekend. Oh, here's Darach Honan. Darach, how are things?
That's how are you getting on?
You're better dressed than the two of us, in fairness, yeah.
You're rocking the Offaly jersey as well you should today.
Yeah. Just Clare were a small bit hard done by there on Monday against Cork. It was a brilliant game, though.
Yeah, it was a great game. Some really good play on both sides, and I thought Clare did very well. There wasn't a whole pile in it, but I thought Cork, were deserving winners as well. They had some excellent performances. I thought Ben Cunningham, particularly, I couldn't understand how he's not playing this weekend or hasn't played yet in the senior championship. Yeah, because he's someone who looks very good.
Yeah, how do you see this weekend going between Cork and Clare? Obviously, we were just saying there, Sean O'Donoghue looks like he might be available for game time. Aidan McCarthy, he's touch and go. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on this weekend?
Yeah, Aidan McCarthy, I'd be hoping he will play, but if it is a soft tissue injury, it'd be hard to see how he would recover that quickly. But he'd be a big addition for Clare back in as the free taker as well. I think it's going to be a tough game for Clare. Cork, I kind of thought Cork at the outset would have a big year this year, and it kind of looks now like this is a must win for both teams. I'd be hoping, I thought it's hard to read much from what from the Waterford game last week, but I thought obviously the Limerick performance was very good, and I'd be hoping that Clare are kind of on that upward trajectory. And I think, and I'm kind of hoping as well, that the home advantage will be enough to kind of see us over the line. If it wasn't in Thurles, I'd be a little bit more nervous about it.
You'd imagine Darach as well. It's some weekend of games, but this is basically a de facto kind of Munster semi-final, isn't it? Really, if Clare win, they're probably in a Munster final. And I'd imagine the Waterford game wouldn't have taken that much out of them, not as much as the Limerick game, if you get me. Like say they blew a few cobwebs off maybe in that game. They should be prime. Like this is prime for a classic game, realistically.
Yeah, I mean, like the Waterford game, it was a difficult one in terms of there wasn't really a natural flow to it, and you're probably hoping after the Limerick game you'd be able to build on that, but it was a totally different game altogether, so you'd nearly have to wipe that from the memory and just move on. But it's a huge game for Clare. I think I just looking at the way the results are likely to pan out, I think Clare probably have to win this to qualify. So in my opinion, it's kind of do or die for Clare, really. I just think that the way the results will fall will mean we'll probably have to win this one.
Isn't it mad when you think about it?
Tipp to beat Limerick is what I'm hearing. We're going to knock out Limerick.
You, Shane?
Isn't it mad when you think about it, though? Clare, beat Limerick already, won last weekend. If they're beaten this weekend, they're probably gone. The 5 in a row chasing Munster title hopefuls Limerick, going for 4 in a row. If they're beaten this weekend, they're probably gone as well. Like I don't know. Like this is as good a weekend of Munster hurling as you're going to have realistically.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Like because even if you take it, there's only 5 teams in it. Waterford are gone, but there's still so much to be decided, and so much can happen. Like it's a testament. I think the structure is brilliant, that Munster Championship structure, and obviously the way they've structured now is brilliant, and it makes for a great weekend this weekend.
I was chatting to your buddy Colin Ryan, obviously part of the All-Ireland winning team 10 years ago, along with yourself. He was saying the big thing that he's worried about this weekend is the pace in that Cork forward line. Like, you've loads of pace in your attack as well, but like just to go through some of the names there that you might be worried about: Darragh Fitzgibbon, Shane Barrett, Seamus Harnedy, maybe Shane Kingston will be in there. Conor Lahan can come in. There is a lot of pace.
Yeah, there's a lot of pace. I think There's actually a lot of pace in the Clare backs, I would say, as well. Adam Hogan's lively, Dave McInerney, Jim Ryan, Rory Hayes, they're all lively as well. So I'm not overly worried about that side of it. I think Clare will need to keep compact, and I suppose against Tipperary, probably we didn't keep it compact enough in Ennis. We left a lot of space for their forwards to operate in, and be hoping maybe that the midfield and half forwards, particularly to start the game, that they would work back the field that bit more and limit Cork's options. Like I thought the Cork Tipp game, Cork opened up Tipp very early and often in the first 10-15 minutes, and they didn't really capitalise on it. But you can't allow Cork those chances again in Ennis, because if they do capitalise, and you're in a bad way then.
Do you think those Mighty? Do you think those Cork backs can keep down the likes of David Fitzgerald? I know Ryan Taylor might be midfield, but his pace coming through. Tony Kelly, obviously, Shane O'Donnell, who's been unbelievable, Mark Rogers, and obviously Aidan McCarthy if he's fit.
Yeah, well, Tipp caused them quite a bit of trouble the last day as well. Put up a massive score on them, and it was the goals probably that kept Cork in it. Realistically, I think Clare have a lovely kind of balanced forward line in the way of, they have a couple of big bruisers in the likes of Duggan, and even if Fitzgerald goes wing forward as well, they have the Silk in Tony Kelly. They're a different type of player completely in Aidan McCarthy. Ian Galvin is a different type of player as well. Obviously Shane O'Donnell can do different things out in the half forward line that we hadn't seen up until last year. There's a fair balance in that Clare forward line. To me, this is every appearance of probably a really, really high scored affair, like something like 226, 225, that type of thing, probably on both sides. I think both attacks will fancy their chances of going to town to some extent, and it's going to be which of the defences can stand up and can hold out. Clare obviously very disappointed with the mistakes they made in Ennis the last day. They kind of wrote those wrongs against Limerick, and again the last day, no goal conceded the last day. This is teed up to be a belter of a game. Very difficult game to call as well. And as Derek says, there's so much on the line. Everything is hanging in the balance realistically.
Get off the fence now, Michael, and call it.
Well, to be fair now, Derek, I called. Shano said that to me a couple of weeks ago when I called the Kilkenny and Galway would be a draw, and again when I called Tipp and Cork to be a draw. So sometimes it's okay to be on the fence.
Yeah,
one in a draw. So
I think there'll be a draw on Munster this weekend. Yeah, I'm just not 100% sure which one.
A draw would do us, I'd say, would it?
Yeah, you'd be on 5. You'd be in decent shape on 5, I'd say. Yeah, it's mad, boys. There's never been anything like the permutations involved here. If Tipp win or if Limerick draw, or there's a million different pieces that you're moving into place here.
There's some comment in here, Dark. Moan and Honan on to knock Limerick from P-Well. Patrick was 74.
P-Well 74, that Kieran, is it?
That's probably Kieran. Yeah. Just to jump over to Limerick for a second, their first few games, obviously they weren't that impressive against Waterford, but still won with 14 men, and obviously Clare beat them the last day around. Do you think that Limerick are building towards back being to where they were at, or are there problems?
I do, yeah. I mean, I think P-Well 74 has it wrong there. I'd actually be pretty confident in Limerick's chances. That was one. I'd be pretty confident in Limerick's chances this weekend, and I'd still have them down if I was calling the All-Ireland winner. I'd have Limerick down as it at the moment.
Build them up to break them down, boy.
Look, I said that at the start of the year. Look, I think they have the best team. They were probably disappointing, in their performance against against Waterford in first day, and they kind of limped over the line, but they were a man down, and they just didn't look like they were, championship ready. Even against Clare, I thought Clare played a lot better than them, but still only won the game by a point. And if you take it that, they kept themselves in the game, in a game that, they were being outplayed in, and they didn't take maybe the chances that they could have taken, and they could have still won the game. So against, a team that has been pretty close in the last couple of years anyway. So I think Limerick are still very well positioned. They've had that 2-week break now building into this game, and they'll have been planning for this game. So I'd expect a big performance out of them. And if they can get over the line in Munster and, build a bit of momentum up, they'll be very, very hard to beat, if they do get into Croke Park later on in the year.
They just need to survive, Darach, don't they? Really, they need to survive Munster essentially.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I think they will. I think they will. They'll win. You know, I think they'll do enough to get out. And I think, you know, as they're getting more, the way they've probably structured their training, they're looking to win All Ireland. You know, it's different for a Clare, Tipp, or a Cork, or Waterford, where they're doing their utmost to get out of Munster or win a Munster. But Limerick have been there and done that now over the last few years, so they'll have been structuring their training around that and trying to peak later on in the year. And I suppose it's a fine balancing act in that if they do get out, you know, they could beat all around them, but they have to get out first, and I think they will.
Do you think, in some ways, Darach, the way that Waterford set up and having like Darragh Lyons, who's, you know, he's a good player, but having him corner back on Tony Kelly at times, and I suppose some of the inside forwards playing out and some of the outside forwards seeming to be playing in, just Waterford seemed a bit all over the shop. In some ways, did that give a false reflection of where Clare are at? Could that be a risk?
Yeah, I like. Well, it was totally baffling watching the game last time. I mean, the first half particularly. It was a tough watch, honestly, that game, where, you know, tactically Waterford were just all over the shop, and it looked, the way they were structuring their attacks was a bit more like a rugby league approach, where they were running in lines and taking kind of a pot shot from out the field. Generally from one of their defenders was taken on the shot from midfield, and, you know, inevitably most of them went wide. So there was no real flow to the game as a result. The Clare forwards were going out and back, you know, following them in. They had to mark them out the way and then coming back in. And after a while, you could see them kind of getting to grips with the Waterford puck out. And as Waterford were progressing the ball out the field, they were leaving an awful lot of space behind them. And Dave Fitzgerald and Ian took advantage of that very well. Where, you know, if for those hurling traditionalists who wanted a bit of an encouragement, you know, the goal that Clare scored in the first half gave them that, where it was direct hurling into Dave Fitzgerald, quick pass and bang, goal, and oceans of space left in front of the Waterford backs. You know, it almost felt like Waterford were playing with no backs or no forwards, which was just hard to work out how they managed that, but they did.
Yeah. Is there any matchups that you're excited for here in this one, Michael?
It's always interesting to see from an opposition point of view who's going to pick up Kelly. Whether, like, I thought it was very smart, and Brian Lohan has done it several times. When they knew Caleb Lyons is going to pick him up when they played Waterford, they played him in corner forward or full forward. When they knew Darragh Lyons was picking him up the other day, he went in full forward, he went in corner forward, brought him into an awkward spot. So it'd be interesting. Like, if Sean O'Donoghue comes back, you wouldn't see him going straight on him. Niall O'Leary's probably maybe more likely, or maybe Jeremy Limerick, maybe. Yeah, maybe he was probably quiet enough the last day. That's definitely going to be an interesting one. Out around the middle of the park, like we've talked about him regularly, Shane. Like, I do think Ryan Taylor is a player that makes Clare tick. Have to say, and will Brian Roach maybe pick him up and maybe try and do a stopping kind of job on him? Potentially, because I think Taylor puts Clare on the front foot a lot of the time. So that'll probably be 2 or 3 that I'm particularly looking forward to.
Yeah, Darach, what do you think?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who picks up Tony. As always, it's going to be interesting to see what they do, how they approach Tony. You know, the Tipperary and the Waterford approach was man marking, and Limerick kind of give them that bit more freedom usually. You know, I don't think Darragh Lyons was the right man for it, and Tony showed that going on. You know, getting man of the match, scoring 13 points, but it was pretty smart of Clare really to, when he was being picked up by Darragh, just to put him in the corner, because he's not used to playing cornerback. And to bring him in there, you know, there was a good chance to take advantage of that matchup. For this weekend, I suppose, you know, I'd be interested to see how Fitzgibbon gets on centre forward. He had a brilliant game the first day and a bit quieter than the second day. So John will probably be picking him up at times, and, you know, it'll be, as always with the half forwards, you're kind of you're marking them, but you're relying on the lads coming back the field to help out, to chip in as well. You know, Clare probably don't do that man marking thing really out around the middle of the field anyway. But yeah, there's loads of interesting matchups. I suppose inside, you know, who's going to start for Cork inside? Will Lehan get back into the team? And if so, you know, who'll be picking him up? Because I think he's a player that can do damage.
Isn't that a really interesting one? Lads, there's a couple of lads that generally for Cork seem to get a massive bounce off the bench. Kingston's one of the best players off the bench of the last 10 years, I'd say, and his scores are backed up. But then when he starts, he's generally a lot quieter and he's called ashore, and they maybe don't have the same option coming in then. Lahan was brilliant the last day when he came in. It's a very tricky one. Do you start him and then maybe risk getting not nearly as much out of him, and then what you're bringing in isn't as good? It's a difficult kind of a balancing act for Pat Ryan there.
Yeah, with Kingston, like, it's a funny one because I always feel like he's a brilliant player, and like when he does get on, you know, even when he's starting, I feel like he offers an awful lot. He probably got taken off a bit, you know. Sometimes when your father's over a team, they're nearly overcompensating, you know, so that everyone's perceived to be treated the same. But I think he's been an excellent player. I definitely have him in from the start, and he'd be a player to be very worried about if he was starting. So interesting to see, like, he surely did enough to get into the team the last day.
Like, I think Clare will win this game, and the reason I do is just looking at that forward line. I just don't see how Cork, who are like, they're a team that's probably changed around a little bit. They have a new manager under Pat Ryan, and I think he's going in the right direction. But like, I just don't see them being able to stop the physical power of David Fitzgerald, Cathal Malone. Obviously, Tony Kelly isn't a powerhouse per se, but obviously he's a brilliant direct runner. And then Shane O'Donnell's become such a good ball winner. Mark Rogers is a handful. Peter Duggan, obviously a big target man as well. So that's why I'd be looking at Clare thinking pretty solid backline, and they've just got so many powerful runners there.
Yeah, I like that now. And with the home advantage, I'm pretty, you know, I am confident that we're going to get to win this again. I don't think it's going to be easy, but I do think we should. And like, even like that, adding Shanahan in off the bench, like our feast that goes to start him, you know, maybe he has done enough to start, but he's someone who will really trouble him as well. You know, that physical power, I think, you know, probably on that, we have the more physical side, you know, at the moment. And I think Cork are probably improving in that area. But it's probably an area where we've had an upper hand on them in recent years.
Can I just ask you, Darach, quickly, right? So everyone would say that Cusack Park plays a lot smaller. I've played there a couple of times. I wouldn't have noticed too much. Do you, like, Clare are a big physical side. Cork want space, want to open up. As Cyril Farr would say, if you give them room to dance, they'll dance. But like, will they have room? Like, does Cusack Park, do you feel it plays tighter than what the dimensions actually are?
Not at all. It kind of amazes me that commentary is put out there. Like, I always loved playing up there. I feel like there's, you know, plenty of space for forwards, and you know, maybe it's a case of, you know, an away team coming in, and well, they say this, like, you know, obviously the fans are kind of on top of the crowd, and you can kind of see maybe a visiting teams moving in the field to get away from maybe, you know, the lads from West Clare giving them a few. But so maybe for that reason it plays that bit tighter. But I never ever found that. I really enjoyed playing at Cusack Park, and I think the dimensions of it are big, like, you know, compared to any grounds around the place. So it just, yeah, that could be the only explanation I can think of.
Do you always think of the All Ireland final in 2013 anytime Clare are coming up against Cork?
I suppose we went after that 13 final. We went a good few years where we couldn't get near them. So it was kind of like, I think they beat us a good few times in a row, you know, in league and championship, and we were kind of thinking, well, I suppose at least we won the most important one. But now at least again we're back competing very well with them, and have had the upper hand in the last few years. But yeah, I mean, it'll always probably bring up memories of those two great games, the drawn final and the final after. So yeah, it's a nice one to be reminded of, I suppose. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
Can I ask a tricky question, and feel free not to answer it, Darach, if you don't want to. But when everyone thinks of the replay in 13, they think of Shane O'Donnell coming in and making, you know, his big impact or whatever. And you were obviously the player that missed out. Was that, I don't know, did that make the All-Ireland success in any way difficult or tainted for you, or am I way off the mark?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was different, you know, like the build up to the game was probably a bit more challenging, and yeah, the build up to the game was definitely more challenging. Not talking to people, because you're trying to keep a low profile and keep things in house and all that. So I kept it to myself and all that. But then there was a great release when I did get out onto the field and managed to get a score. So
you scored one of the maddest goals that was ever scored in an All-Ireland final. Would I be right in saying you essentially threw the ball and did not make contact with it, and it just ended up in the net?
You'd be completely wrong in saying that. And there's photographic evidence to prove it. So, no, I got a little touch on it, and it's bouncing over the line. But yeah, no, like I said, it probably was a bit difficult in lead up, but getting on and winning and getting a score at the end, it was a great release, and sure, it was a great time. We really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and Michael was just saying earlier about how Shane O'Donnell was only told the day of or an hour beforehand. At what stage did you know the situation with the team?
Jesus, it's 10 years ago now, so the details are blurred. But I'd say probably the Thursday or whatever. I think Shane knew the Thursday as well, to be honest. People kind of mythicize these things and talk them into that was it.
Yeah, so we know you have a meeting to go to, so you can't stay on any longer. But any final thoughts on what you see happening this weekend?
Sure. Look, I'll just call it Clare and Limerick. We'll be happy with that. Hopefully for a Clare Limerick Munster final, repeated last year.
Yeah. Okay, well, look, brilliant stuff, Darach. Thanks for coming on. I know you're pressed for time.
All right, thanks, lads. Take it easy.
Cheers, Darach. Good man.
Okay, great to get him on there. All-Ireland winner 10 years ago as well. And the comments keep coming in. As a Clare man says, Grodog Grakon, who was in the Devon stand, Darach's goal was the one I had the clearest view of.
Yeah, I still, it was a weird goal. It was great for him to get on, having been dropped for the final. It was great for him to get on and get that goal. To come on and make an impact in a game does make some difference to how you remember something, if you get me. Particularly because I'm sure he was so disappointed with being dropped for that game.
Yeah, Harry Roberts there, my old buddy from Coola, Darach Honan playing a blinder. He says, I hope you're feeling better, Harry. Harry's been in hospital there for a while, so I hope you're doing well in there. And Adrian McGrath says, Darach got the first score, the last score of those 2 games, which is a mad
That's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one. I marked Darach one time. He was playing for UCC. We played him in a league game with Joel, and he'd obviously have, I think he's 6'7", is he?
Well, he has about a foot and a half over you.
Yeah, I'm about 5'10" on a good day.
In heels, maybe.
I just remember, anytime a high ball was coming in, his hand would be up, and he'd just be literally like that. The second, you just have to flick his hand away because, even with the hurl, you'd barely reach him. He was some handful. Remember the All-Ireland under-21 semi-final against Galway when he scored something like 2-7 from play? Oh my God! It was repeated on TG Catter during the COVID, as my old fella would say, and it was one of the great individual performances. He was some handful on his day.
It certainly was. So how do you see this game going this weekend? Are you going with that draw that you kind of speculated?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Do you know what though? I probably still don't have the faith in Cork. I don't feel as confident. I think Clare will probably win by 2.
Okay, so that's going to be a very interesting game to look into. We're hoping to have Mark Foley on in a few minutes as well. I hope you sent him the link. You did, good stuff. Right, so Tipperary against Limerick.
I'm going to stop you there. Do you smell blood? Because if every Tipp man doesn't smell blood, there's something wrong. For all the hardship that you've been dealt, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, you literally have an opportunity. Limerick are kind of like a boxer on the ropes, in a bit of bother here. And ye boys, you'd want to be smelling blood. I'd say Liam Cattell is smelling blood, and I'd say he has the squad smelling blood. This is some glorious opportunity for ye to right all the wrongs of the last 6 years.
Well, look, I think Babs Keaton summed it up best when his Tipperary team were beaten well by Galway in the 06 league. They're dead only to wash them. Look, obviously I'm exaggerating massively. Look, Tipp have a great if Cork get the job done against Clare. Obviously, everyone knows that Tipperary can knock Limerick out, but I don't think you can make Tipperary favourites for this game by any stretch of the imagination. There was a bit of the rumour mill earlier this week that Gerard Hegarty, that he's got off the panel. That seems to be absolute nonsense. John Kiley, I think you were part of the group that was chatting to him last week about how people are no longer, loving Limerick and their second favourite team and all this kind of stuff because eventually people get sick of the same team winning.
Yeah.
But I still make Limerick favourites for this team. I know they're down Sean Finn. I know there's been different injury issues with Declan Hannon and Cian Lynch at different times in different matches.
Don't think Cian has done much training now, by all accounts.
And maybe eventually that kind of takes a toll. Like Michael Fennelly, of course, won Hurler of the Year when he only had 4 training sessions in 2011 throughout the course of the year. Maybe Cian Lynch will do that too. Maybe Hegarty will come back to top form. But there's a lot of question marks over Limerick. So you can't ignore those. But you can't decide all of a sudden that Limerick can go from the all-conquering team they lose one game. They're not overly impressive against Waterford, and all of a sudden you start backing against them. They've been battering Tipperary. And normally in the third quarter of games, and then Tipperary maybe steady the ship for the last 15 minutes when the game is gone. I don't see how you can all of a sudden just say Tipperary, or like Liam Cahill, I think is bringing the team on massively. But his Waterford team, they lost by 4 points, wasn't it, in that Munster final?
Yeah.
Then the next 2 times they lost by 11. It's not like he has a history of beating and outfoxing Kiley and Kinnerk. So I don't see how you can go against Limerick this weekend.
No, well, I put you this way, like I'm looking at the game and I'm kind of thinking 70% of me is thinking, yeah, Limerick are going to be back to themselves, 3-week gap, they'll have up things, they'll maybe, have a few plans in place if teams are getting at them and getting success like they were last time. And then probably about 30% of me is thinking, like, are they realistically on the slide here? They're missing one of the best cornerbacks of all time. There's a few injury doubts. I put there as well, there's very few lads playing well. Do you know what I mean? Like, of their big names, they're not, there's only a handful of them playing well or playing to their optimum. Tom Morrissey probably been one of them. So probably 30% of me is thinking, Jesus, this is some opportunity for Tipp. A Tipp team who are going well and who, if they're able to close down the floodgates in their defence and maybe potentially only concede a goal or two, you're probably thinking, here's the team on the rise, and maybe you're thinking, here's a team on the slide a tiny bit, maybe. So, like if you ask me, during the league, this is a 95% Limerick and a 5% chance Tipp have. But there's and listen, that could all be blown out of the water after this weekend. If Limerick win this weekend, they're back on the horse, and that changes everything. But this is it for them. Like, this is the 4 in a row is here. Like, it's in front of them on Sunday.
Like, Tipperary do want revenge for some of these hammers that have been doled out to them. Tipp won the 2019 Munster round robin game, but that was a Pyrrhic victory. Like, I think on that day, it was a Declan Hannon, Keane Lynch, and one other of the main men were all rested for that game. Tipperary went out and they lost Bonner Maher to a crucial for the rest of the season. Carl Barrett was missing for the Munster final a couple of weeks later when Tipp got absolutely hammered. Even the year beforehand, 2018, Tipp got hammered. So the last 5 matches that have mattered, Tipperary have been beaten well and hammered on occasion here. So Tipperary really want a bit of revenge for that, and they can say they don't all they want, but we all know what it's like in a dressing room. You don't want to keep losing to them. But Tipperary do know they have an out the following week against a Waterford team that, who knows, maybe, there's talks of different lads going off to America, Australia, all that sort of crack. How hard are they training at the moment? Where's their heads at? If anyone's got a niggle, are they really going to are they really going to risk it for a match that doesn't matter? For Limerick, this is do or die. That makes them a very dangerous animal. Like, will nerves come in this for Limerick because they're teetering on the edge of the cliff here? Or will it be like, okay, last year against Clare, went to extra time, we had the nerve. Galway put it up to us, we showed the nerve. All Ireland against Kilkenny, we showed the nerve. You have to go with the notion that Limerick will keep showing the nerve.
You kind of have to go with the notion that they keep showing the nerve until they don't you? And even the Clare game, like, what are we at? Like, I just, it's more of a gut feeling that there's a lot of things just not potentially right with Limerick, and even body language on the pitch maybe wouldn't be compared to other years, but they've lost one game and been beaten by a point in that game. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. And I'm right in saying it was a point when Kilkenny beat them in 19 as well. Like, they're not going to get blown out, definitely not. But like, if Limerick If Limerick get over this by a point or two at the weekend, that changes everything. But you would say, like, it would be unrealistic to think the Tipp won't end up on 5 points regardless of what happens on Sunday. You'd imagine they'd be in a safe spot. Saying that, if Cork and Clare draw, Cork end up on 4, then it's go to Limerick and get a result. There's just the permutations involved here. I'm sure Limerick will just want to take care of business and get a result, but it's definitely not a foregone conclusion.
Yeah, so my buddy Harry Roberts says, Saint, there's a smashing looking nurse from Clare and has fallen in love with Verney. It's the eyes. Can you help, please? He's a married man.
Married man, Harry.
Adrian McGrath says, Tipp were ahead after 60 plus last year. If that happens this year, will Limerick dog it out? Not so sure. I fancy them to win, but if Tipp get on top, there won't be a comeback. But the problem is, like, even in the league, wasn't it that burst in the third quarter where Limerick had something like, was it 110 to a point or something crazy like that? You had the 16-point turnaround in 2021. Tipp left it too long to empty the bench or didn't find a way for someone to take off their helmet, slow the game down for a few minutes, like Offaly did a couple of times last night. It's the right thing to do. He did do it. Obviously, he did it.
The two lads involved both had concussions 2 weeks previous now, I will say.
Yeah, but sure, one of them got a knee in the side.
Yeah, but you take off the helmet to get a drink of water.
Yeah, but anyway, look, the point is that Tipperary should be doing the exact same thing. They should be taking the helmets off because they get a knee in the glute.
Take the sting out of it.
But it has to happen. I mean, if Tipperary are, being hit by a tsunami, again, Tipp have to find a way to stop it. Like, people would look at some of the injuries that Limerick have, and rightly so, and say, what can you do without Sean Finn? But like, Tipp are going to be without Jason Ford. So you've got your 9 out of 10 free taker who isn't there. Like, Grode O'Connor's a good free taker, but what you saw is he tired late on against Cork. 1 or 2 frees didn't go his way. And I'm a big fan, so that's no slight on him. But Jason Ford won't be playing. You're still without Ger Brown, Paddy Cadell, Craig Morgan, Barry Heffernan. Tipp don't have the depth that they would ordinarily have this year going into the big game. Like, I'm going to bring up the sort of tactics board here to have a little look at how this might match up. And I'm looking at it for Limerick. Just the team makes total sense. Assuming to go with this, there's some talk maybe Kyle Hayes go to the forwards, but I think Sean Finn's injury means he probably won't. But Nicky Quaid, best goalkeeper around. Mike Casey, brilliant defender. Dan Morrissey, never let the team down, brilliant. Barry Nash. Now, this is, if Ronan Maher goes spare, he'll go spare. Maybe that won't happen. Maybe there'll be, mano a mano everywhere all over the field. Maybe Dan McCormick will be further up the pitch, whatever. But we'll come to that in a little while. But so Burns, Hannon, Hayes, that makes sense. Will O'Donoghue, Darragh O'Donovan. Now, will Hegarty start or will it be Cathal O'Neill again? But either way, they're both brilliant players. Keane Lynch, Tom Morrissey, Casey, Flanagan, Gallant. So the whole team is balanced, makes sense. A couple of lads out of form, grand. But from a Tipperary point of view, Sean Ryan possibly won't start in this game because it didn't really go his way the last day. Very good player, promising. Came on, got his goal against Clare. Mark Keogh was 1-4 off the bench against Cork, so of course he'll start for Jason Ford. So that means you've got probably Grode O'Connor on the frees. Noel can take them as well. And I'm just then thinking, does Jake Morris go out the wing and maybe Sean Ryan inside? Or does Conor Bowe, who was brought on and taken off the last day, does he go wing forward? If Tipperary play like this and Dan McCormick isn't a wing forward, of all the players that Tipperary have options around, which are John McGrath, maybe Bonner Maher, maybe also Seamus Callanan, to me, I think Bowe is the one that makes more sense because you will need energy and enthusiasm, and like he's got power as well and he can really hurl. It didn't go for him the last day and he was taken back off. But to me, of all the options, like Bonner struggled big time against Limerick down in the league semi-final. I think John McGrath has kind of been a little bit off colour as well lately. And like, there's only so many players that you can have that don't have the speed and the energy to get around the pitch, even if they have class against Limerick. So that's, to me, why he makes the most sense of those options. But like, I'm talking question marks around Tipp here. I'm laying out a balanced team for Limerick that makes total sense. And I've got questions with Tipp in different positions.
Yeah, no, totally. The thing about Conor Bowe is interesting. Like, what were the conversations like in the couple of days after the Cork game? Because it is a difficult thing for a player's confidence to come on in a game and be taken off especially in the one half. If you're brought off, 20 brought after 20 minutes and you come off 65 or something, maybe it's a little bit different. So his head will have to be in the right place if he is starting. But athletically, and if they want to really have the energy, I would say, to take out Limerick, particularly for the first 50, 55 minutes, someone like him will probably need to start. And then you're talking about the finishers. Then you're talking about Callanan to come in and take advantage of a tiring defence. John McGrath to come in, show the bit of class, bit of cuteness. And they're going to need all of those lads. To me, from a Limerick point of view, I think Limerick need to be leading in this one. And I don't think they can afford to be chasing from the start, because Adrian had a good question. Adrian McGrath, with the way Limerick are playing at the moment, are they capable of being 5 or 6 down and dogging it out and clawing it back? I don't think that's
They did in the league semi-final. I mean, that's not long ago.
They did, but there's a fair bit of water under the bridge since then now. And I just wonder, I think they'll try and hit the ground running from the start. I think they'll try and build up a 3 or 4 point buffer and try and keep it in place and maybe control the game. They definitely don't want They don't want to be playing that type of a game. They're playing the league semi-final anyway. They don't, because they're probably a little bit less. There could be potentially a little bit less trust in themselves to find the gears now, just because there's those few seeds of doubt kind of maybe have crept in.
Yeah, well, look, here's the question that I have in terms of, will Tipperary have Ronan Maher as the spare man back? I'm not sure which matchup works for Ronan Maher. Is it Hegarty? Because, he's a brilliant hurler, but, covering the ground can be difficult at times. So I think maybe Mark and Keane Lynch might be the one that they have for him, which would maybe put Brian O'Mara on Tom Morrissey. I think Flanagan against Breen makes sense for Tipperary. And even though Galan is very, very difficult in the air, I think Cathal Barrett of Tipperary's options probably makes the more sense. So if you do move Dan McCormick up the field and you had it a bit more like that, obviously you can see the spaces appearing far more in that Limerick attack now, which is obviously more problematic for Tipperary. And Tipperary have looked like conceding goals. 12 chances coughed up the last 2 games, 7 goals scored. Whereas at the other end, Limerick aren't offering up nearly the same amount of opportunities. But so this is my worry then. If Tipperary do go mano a mano, which is apparently what you need to do to beat Limerick, obviously you can't leave Barry Nash free. Maybe you can leave one of the other 2 defenders free on the short puckouts, but certainly not Barry Nash or any of that half back line. So for Tipperary to press up and make sure that doesn't happen, you're going to leave space at the other side. You're probably going to have to accept that you'll give up 4 or 5 goal opportunities.
Yeah.
And are Limerick going to miss them?
Yeah, but there is an element of, it's a bit kamikaze in a way, because, you kind of almost have to speculate to accumulate almost. You have to take the chances to try and create chances for yourself. You're going to leave some chances at the other end. That's why I think, Limerick will go for the throat if they get. Can they hit 2 or 3 goals this weekend? If they hit 2 or 3 goals, they're going to win. But here's the man that knows all about all the rumours that are circulating around Limerick now, and he can give us the starting 15, Mark.
How you doing, lads?
All good.
First thing anyway, lads, is I know absolutely nothing about what's going on. Any bit of information or nuggets of information, I'd love to get them, but at the moment, your guess is as good as mine anyway as to what Limerick will start with,
Hey, just a quick one on that. Things have changed a good bit since you were playing, Mark. Are you happy that your inter-county career was immune from social media rumors and all sorts of wild stuff flying around? It's kind of a bit mad. Someone puts out something on social media and it almost spreads and it becomes fact almost to some people,
Yeah, no. To be fair, I suppose it was there in our time as well, bar the social media aspect. They're always we went through a barren patch there for a while and weren't very successful. So there was a lot of rumor, innuendo, all of that kind of stuff at the time. But obviously now with the element of social media, that accelerates the rumor mill and it goes far and wide very, very quickly. So I suppose the pace at which these rumors go around is a lot quicker now. But they was there in our time as well. There always seemed to be some reason other than the main reason why we weren't winning things, which is we just weren't good enough. But there always seemed to be some other reason, and that seems to be the case now as well. Like one a defeat against probably Clare, our nearest and dearest rivals, and the rumour mill goes into overdrive. But I'm just led to believe that training is going fairly well, and that Limerick are ready for Sunday.
Yeah, it's only 3 or 4 weeks since Limerick looked so good in the league, beating Tipp in the semi-final. That third quarter where they blew Tipp out of the water, and then obviously the league final they dismissed Kilkenny with minimal fuss. I mean, things haven't gone that bad in the meantime. They've won a game and they've lost another by a point, Mark.
Yeah, definitely. And look, I was in backstage there when you were talking away there. I suppose
you're in the green room.
The green room, that's it. Green room. Yeah. So basically, look, they were impressive. Looked like they were ticking all the boxes. But I suppose if you look back to last year, the teams that caused Limerick trouble were Clare in the Munster final, could have won the game, and the All-Ireland final as well. Kilkenny caused them big trouble as well. Obviously, Galway in the semi-final as well, but maybe for different reasons. But certainly Kilkenny and Clare pushed up on them, and that's what we've seen from Waterford this year and from Clare as well in the second game. They've pushed up, which is has asked different questions of Limerick, and to be fair, they kind of haven't answered them yet. I'm assuming and I'm hoping that they will have the answers maybe on Sunday, regardless of the result, just in terms of approaching the game and how best to get by that press. I think there definitely is an opportunity to definitely go more direct. I mean, if you look at the Clare game, sometimes there was huge space in front of Aaron Gillan and Seamus Flanagan, And a lot of the time, they just opted not to go with it, and they still tried to go through the lines. Like, you play what you see in front of you. I know they're used to going through the lines for the last 4 or 5 years, but I think there definitely was an opportunity against Clare to get that ball in quickly in front of their full forward line, which they neglected to take a lot of the time. So, assuming that Tipperary will do something similar, I'd like to see them maybe go a little bit more direct on Sunday.
There's a comment in here from Raymond Gilbourne saying, "Love Mark on TG Carr. Can you ask him to give us an over and a goppel, please?"
Over the goppel, yeah. It's a bit like that's a bit like Buff Egan. You see some of the lads now, they're in the gym all the time, and jeepers, I'll tell you, I wouldn't like to be marking some of these guys, but they've got the strength of however many horses anyway.
Yeah, he's a stallion, man.
He's a stallion, man. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So there's some of them phenomenal athletes nowadays playing the game. It's great to see, and the game is really going from strength to strength, I think.
Does it worry you at all, Mark, that the likes of Declan Hannon had to come off the first day? Then you also had Cian Lynch coming off, Sean Finn getting injured, of course, as well. He's out for the season. Is there any kind of worry of miles on the clock, same group, a lot of the same guys on the pitch over the last 5 years?
Well, I'm not sure about a worry, but it definitely is a question mark. And it's an obstacle that they'll just have to prove to themselves, I suppose, in the public, that it's not a factor. But certainly that question is there. I think Sean Finn is going to be a big loss. Like, absolutely fantastic cornerback, great man marker. But I think on top of that, his distribution is fantastic. Declan as well. I mean, he's a vital cog in that that back line as well. He reads the play so well, but his distribution is what marks him out as different to the other centre backs. He's a fantastic distributor of the ball. Cian Lynch hasn't really been himself since he came back from injury. So you'll be looking for a big performance from Cian, but it's very difficult. Like, Cian had horrific injuries there over the last couple of years, and it's very difficult to come back straight away. So it might take him a little bit of time to settle back into this thing. But you'd be hoping that by the time he does hit his groove, that Limerick are still in the championship.
Yeah,
but those questions are there, definitely, no doubt about it, and it's going to be interesting to see how they fare on Sunday.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you can see it properly on your screen there, but Mark, are there any matchups that you would be interested in, or anything that you think might be slightly different to how I have it here?
It'll be something similar to that, I'd say. Like, again, the big question mark from a Tipp point of view, and I know Liam Cahill is very direct, a lot of energy. Can they afford to really push up? Like, do they have the legs at the back? That's the big question I'd have about Tipperary. I mean, you look at Declan Dalton's goal against, when they played Cork. Like, in fairness to Declan, he's not a sprinter, and showed a clean pair of heels there to a number of Tipperary defenders. So if Tipp are going to go with that, it's going to be fairly high risk. And the flip side then, from a Limerick point of view, is that if that is the kind of shape of the team there, as you have it on screen there, they got to get that ball in fast into that full forward line, because that kind of a setup suits a full forward line if they can get the ball in nice and fast, and maybe diagonal as well, decent ball into them. So it's going to be a big question as to whether Tipp have the gas to kind of live with that. On the flip side then, do Limerick have the pace to exploit that kind of a setup? It's going to be interesting to see what happens. But yeah, Tipp will get, I think Alan Tyne in the middle of the field has been fantastic. William O'Donoghue has a huge job to do there. He was brilliant down in Park Equive the last day. So they'll get their share of scores. I think Noel McGrath will try and dictate the play. I think it's up to Limerick to make sure that he works hard and really works him as hard as they can. But like Tipp have some fantastic hurlers inside then. Like Jake Morris is probably due a big game against Limerick. And I think he'll need a big game on Sunday. So, there's a lot of ifs, ands, buts and maybes. But certainly that shape, I think it would be, I think, in Limerick's best interests. Obviously, to play it as you see it, give it to the loose man. But if it's on inside, give it in. And I think there's scores to be got then.
Michael?
Tynan and O'Donoghue is going to be spicy, isn't it? Probably again before a ball is thrown in, I'd say. Yeah,
two excellent players, really, really high energy players. I think Alan Tynan has brought a real element of graft there to the Tipperary midfield. He's very direct. And in fairness to him, like, I wouldn't have, I suppose, from the limited amount of times I've seen him in the league, I wouldn't have seen him as a kind of a scorer. But the last day in Cork, he kind of surprised me with the scores. He got some fantastic scores. The one over by the old uncovered stand there in the first half was a fantastic score. I think it was a ball over the top from Noel McGrath. But like, he's really impressed me. He's really added a lot of energy to that Tipperary midfield, and he kind of allows Noel McGrath to do what Noel likes, to kind of take a step back, play the game at his own pace, dictate it, and pick out these passes. So there's some really positive things in Tipperary. I like the way that they're playing at real pace now and tempo. They probably have a little bit more legs in the team, especially up front, if you compare them to last year. And they've real width as well in terms of their use of the ball. Like they're using the whole width of the field as well as the depth of the field as well. So they'll ask serious questions of Limerick. So again, it'll be interesting to see what way Limerick react. I think in terms of if they do push up on them, will they still try and do the same thing, or will they be a bit more direct? And there's also different questions maybe asked of Limerick, especially around the half back line, in that I suppose the system they've had for the last few years is a lot of the time their midfielders have been doing all their defending for them. But when teams push up on you, it's up to you, to man up and do the defending as well as using the ball as well. So they're the question marks that will be there on Sunday.
Shane, just a quick one to throw at you. Who do you see Seamus Kennedy picking up? Is he a Hegarty if he starts potentially?
Yeah, I would have thought so. Well, like him or Morrissey, they're both brilliant athletes and they can both run all day and they can both score. So I would imagine he'll be on one of the two, because otherwise you're going to be putting a pace mismatch or an athleticism mismatch. Like that's one of the troubling things for Tipperary is we sort of run out of a mismatch in terms of dealing with that Limerick athleticism eventually. And you're nearly gambling on, well, hopefully Keane Lynch isn't right so we can get away with it on him. But like the goalkeeping, obviously Nicky Quaid has the experience. He's done it on all the big days. That's a bit of an advantage for Limerick. And then also the free taker. With Jason Ford out, there's a huge amount of pressure on Gerard O'Connor. Mark. Like, I mean, surely those are two massive advantages for Limerick.
Yeah, I think to be fair now against Cork, right? If you're only surmising as to what would have happened, but I've absolutely no doubt if Jason Ford was on the team, you're looking at a 9-10 point victory for Tipp, because really? the frees they missed were vital frees at vital times just to keep that cushion, and I think they probably did play a lot better than Cork. Outside of the first 10 and the last 10 minutes, Cork just managed to hang in there. And then when the game became stretched and loose and open in the last 10 minutes and, players were gassing out, that's when Cork are dangerous. But I think like if that gap was there, I don't think, I couldn't have seen any way for Cork to win that game, because Tipp really bossed that second half. Aside from the first quarter, I think they were in control of that game. But part of the element why Tipp or Cork came back into it was that miss frees, and it was difficult for a rookie like Garrod coming in there and taking those frees. It's his first championship campaign, and Jason Ford is such a fantastic marksman. Like I think he was a huge loss, and I think it's difficult on Garrod. But you know what? It's probably a lot more suitable going into a game knowing you're going to take them. Which he does know, presuming he's starting on Sunday, and he'll have been doing his bit of practice over the last few weeks. But it is a massive factor, all right, because certainly Jason Ford, I think, is probably the best free taker in the country. He's up around, himself and TJ Reid, they're up around 10 out of 10. They're really, really, really good. So that's a loss for Tipperary, no doubt about it. And, from play as well, he'll pick up his couple of scores as well. But Garrod has been doing fantastic in the half-forward line there as well. He's a big man. He's mobile as well for a big man. He's a good striker as well. So, but certainly free-taking-wise, Jason Ford is a big loss, yeah. Now, the other point you referred to there as well, Shane.
What's that? Oh, Nicky Quaid.
Yeah, well, Nicky Quaid hasn't been as good on the puckouts this year, basically because, like, most teams aren't dropping off. They're pressing right up, so his options aren't as plentiful. So, and it's nothing got to do with Nicky Quaid or anything like that. It's just that, their teams are going more man-on-man, and those pockets of space aren't there. So, what they did last year when Kilkenny pushed up on them was they bunched and broke a lot. So maybe you might see something like that if Tipperary do press up. But, and again, they mightn't press up. They might see, right, who's Nicky going to go for if they drop off a little bit, and nobody is sure exactly what the lineup of the full back line will be. And they might decide to go with maybe one or two and maybe bank on the fact that their distribution won't be as good as Sean Finn's, which it won't be, So interesting.
You were talking about one Garrod there, but what about the other Garrod Hegarty, who there's much talk about this week? Do you see it as simple as he starts and potentially proves a point and gets a big reaction and a massive boost in his performance based on what we've seen so far this year?
Yeah, well, I'd say, to be fair to Garrod, and he'd probably be first to admit it himself, the few times I've seen Garrod, he hasn't been at the levels he was over the last few years. I think he'd be first to admit that himself. I assume that the team is based on what's going on in training. So I mean, if there has been an improvement in Garrod's performance, I've no doubt he will start and be given an opportunity to prove himself. But you know, I mean, there is motivation there for Garrod now. There's no doubt about that. And you know, if Garrod gets back to the levels we know he's capable of, well, he's another match winner for Cork, or for Limerick. And if you look at the Limerick team over the last few days, like you'd have Keane probably below par, Garrod was below par in the league final and against Waterford as well. So if you introduce those two back to form, I think they're a different outfit. And having said all of that, even against Clare, whereas they didn't win the game, they still were in the pocket of the ball of winning the game. So they're not that far off, you know.
I'm just thinking, Mark, as an Adair man and Declan Hannon being the same club, how young was he when you realised, oh, we've got a player here?
Well, very young, I suppose. You know, there was a crop in there came through. I think they were the last team from Adair to win the Leader Cup, which would be the primary schools competition in Limerick, and Declan would have been on it, and John Fitzgibbon, and there was a good crop. The likes of Sean Kelly was there as well, who played minor with Limerick, but he did a couple of cruciates, so unfortunately he never made it through. But yeah, he was, you know, an outstanding underage team at that stage, and I remember I think they beat Patrickswell in an under 14 county final, and you know, Declan was outstanding. They beat an under 16 final inside the Gaelic grounds as well. Can't remember who it was, but Declan again outstanding that day. And Shane Fitzgibbon was over the team, who was a former Limerick hurler as well. So you could see, like, from a long way off, he was a really outstanding prospect, and he came on the senior team very, very early. Then I think he was only 17, and we won a championship, and narrowly beat by Newtown Shandrum down in Park Equive. Then I think he scored something like 112 or something like that. So you know, it was patently obvious, like, that he was going to make it, and you know, he's gone on to really shine over the last few years.
Yeah, because like he had a tough day in 2013, you know, the semi-final against Clare. He missed a few frees, and he referenced that afterwards when they did win the All-Ireland. Like, you know, I mean, when that happened, geez, you couldn't quite foresee what happened in the next number of years then.
Yeah, absolutely, and you know, he managed it very well. It was I suppose, a harrowing experience for any young fella, you know, to have the day that he did have. But I think, to be fair, managed it very well, came from it, and just shows the character that's in Declan. Like, he's a fairly laid back fella anyway, but that did hurt, and that did take a bit out of him, all right. But I think John Kiley as well, and you know, the backroom team and all that, you know, we won't go into names, but they certainly have helped Declan, because you know, I think once Declan is happy in himself and confident, you know, he's a very, very good player, and a very, very important player for Limerick. And you know, maybe different questions asked of Declan this year, but it's an opportunity for him to go on and prove that he can answer those questions, you know, because it's probably more of a different role maybe to what Declan has had over the last few years. It maybe it will be maybe I suppose a straightforward centre-back role now, of blocking the middle and still doing your hurling. Whereas a lot of the time over the last few years, Declan has been operating in possession maybe as a +1, you know. But, you know, it's probably a little bit different this year, because teams are really pushing up in Limerick, as you've seen over the last couple of games.
Mark,
go ahead.
I might just throw, we had a couple of kind of random questions in for you earlier on, but just here's one from Jay Kwan. He just said, Mark, who's the best Limerick hurler you played with, and the best you played against from another county?
I suppose Kieran was probably the best. You know, phenomenal athlete, like unbelievable athlete altogether. He was a great player, but I was fortunate enough to play with many, many great players. Just a lot of them just unfortunate they didn't kind of get over the line. Mike Hoolan was a fantastic player as well. I think you know, you'd hear about Mike being a hard man and all that, but Mike was a fantastic hurler. You go to club games when I started out, and he just completely dominated them. David Clark was brilliant as well as a halfback. Like, for a guy like that to function, you know, almost like Ger Coughlin from your own county there.
Yeah.
You know,
Tiny, sure, yeah.
Yeah, to function at that level, like, you know, giving away so much, and of course puckouts landing on top of you. He was a really, really fantastic player. So I suppose, yeah, and many more, to be fair. Gary Kirby, what a free taker. Like, Gary was actually one of the guys, he was better at the more difficult frees, whereas the one in front of the goals, you know, he was obviously very good, but you know, whenever there was a huge question asked of him, this is an impossible free, you know, he'd come up trumps. And I suppose other counties then, well, Henry is a fantastic hurler, but I'd have to say Ken McGrath was probably the best I played against, because I came across him maybe a little bit more than we only ever met Kilkenny once in the championship when I was playing. Ken McGrath was right up there, one of the best, I would say, one of the best. one of the best hurlers Waterford have ever produced, and there was a good few of them at that time. I think Tony Brown was an absolutely brilliant player as well. But the two of those, and that'd be about it. And Henry, of course, was brilliant as well. And sure you could list off all the names on the great Kilkenny team at that time as well. I think Tommy Walsh and JJ Delaney are probably two of the best halfbacks that the game has ever seen. I suppose fortunately, or maybe unfortunately, I didn't get to play against them all that often.
Just the last one for me here, and I don't know, there might be a story in this. I'd say there is. River Power says, can you ask Mark why is Anthony Daly so afraid of him?
No, that's it's a hard one. I don't know, but when I was starting out, Anthony was kind of established at that stage, and I'd always remember league games. And in fairness, there was massive crowds at the league games that time around the mid-90s because Limerick and Clare were kind of at the top end of it as such, and I was kind of coming in even like there could be 15,000 at a league game. And I've said this to Anthony before now, you'd see him down the back, the far end of the field, and sometimes we'd play them in league games and he'd play corner back. Starting out that time early in the league, probably was trying to get fit in that, and Loughnane would throw him into the corner, give him a bit of a break. But there'd be 15,000 people at the game. And, you couldn't hear the fella 10 yards away from you because there was such a big crowd at the game. You'd hear Anthony Daly about 80 yards away, barking down the far end of the field, whatever was in his voice, he never stopped from the moment the ball was thrown in. And, I suppose, fantastic player, Anthony, and a great leader for Clare. But, his voice will go through you. There's no doubt about
that. Mark, who were the characters in the dressing room that really stick out, or any particular stories?
Oh, Chapers, with great characters. I suppose we're starting off. Well, I suppose Mike Hoolan was a great character anyway. Pat Heffernan, I suppose Beefy, when I started out, Beefy was there as well. He was a great player, just unfortunate, got injured and kind of made a comeback then when he was about 37. It's different nowadays, some of the league matches that time were legendary. Like we played at Wexford on a bank holiday weekend there in 97 after being beaten in the All-Ireland final in 96. It was a bank holiday weekend, and I remember got home from work on Tuesday morning, this kind of thing, so it was just completely different. We took a long weekend, but it's just different. When we trained very hard, but like it's not all consuming like it is now with and I suppose some of the stuff that went on in the dressing room was probably best left there as well. We great crack, and I suppose towards the back end when I was finishing up all right, it had got a lot more serious than when I started out, but it didn't mean that we trained any harder. We just probably trained more often, and there was more knowledge, and the sports science thing had taken off at that stage, and the strength and conditioning had really taken off. So we were in the gym a little bit more. But I remember when Tom Ryan was there, we used to train Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and we'd have something at the weekend. Like that's 4 times a week back in the 90s, which was a lot, and cheap for some of the matches inside the Gaelic grounds that time. They were better than championship matches. He was bringing the referee and the 4 umpires and the whole lot, and Sean O'Neill and Mike Hoolan to some of the stuff that went on between them in the middle of the field was really legendary stuff. Like it was really hard stuff, and the game has changed so much, but there's probably a little bit of that missing as well still, like the man-to-man stuff that especially the older generation would probably hark back to. But it was very enjoyable, and we'd great days.
So just coming back to Tipp this weekend, are there any, well actually just because it's Tipperary, but are there any games in particular that you played against Tipp that stand out over everything else?
Well, to be fair, most of the games that stand out were at the start when I started out, because we were a bit more successful. But we beat, I suppose, in '96 we beat Tipperary in the Munster final after a replay, and I think we were about 10 points down at half time, and looked like we were going to be hammered.
I remember I was there.
Yeah, we managed to but it's funny enough. Limerick and Tipp, just there's kind of a history there of comebacks, and if Limerick managed to get it to replay, they seem to win. But that history is there. But that's probably I suppose the more memorable one starting out. We went down to Cork then the following week and managed to win the replay, and we got goals that day. I think we only scored 4-7 or something like that, which is mad considering what the scores they're putting up now. And won the Munster final. And then I suppose the 3 games there was a bit of drama in that as well. And that was a very, in fairness, I'd be the first to say, I played against Tipp teams. It wasn't the best Tipp team of all time. There's no doubt about that. But it was a very important win for Limerick, because we were coming off the back of a very, very barren spell, and it was very important to kind of get over the line and start winning again, because the longer it goes on without winning, the harder it is psychologically to get over that line. So I suppose they'd be two of the more memorable games that I played against Tipperary.
And so, of the players this weekend, who do you see stepping up for? Like, I'm even looking at the scores that Limerick have from play this year. Galan has just 3 points. Seamus Flanagan has 3-2. And after that, you're looking at Morrissey with 5 and Diarmuid Burns with all 3. So it's not like there's a selection of lads who are on fire. Tipp have maybe a little bit more. Jake Morris 2-7, Grode O'Connor 1-2 only, Mark Yo 1-4, and Jason Ford's gone, obviously. So, like, it's actually... I'm finding it difficult to pick a clear kind of guy who's going to take over this game.
Yeah, just looking at the games, like the only thing is, like Tipp do have a real goal threat, and any team that Liam Khan is manager of, they seem to really go for the jugular. So it would be important that, like, Limerick, in as much as possible, try and keep a clean sheet, and they managed to do very well in the league match. With much of the same personnel from Tipp. That will be playing on Sunday. So I think from a Tipp perspective, it's really important the younger lads step up that you just mentioned there. I think Jake Morris has to have a good game for Tipp. I think most games I've seen him against Limerick now, he hasn't been great. He was good the last day. I'm not sure who they're going to start instead of Jason Ford, but I think Mark Keogh is probably, he was good the last day. He has gas as well, like, and he's around a couple of years now. So if he gets the nod, like someone like him, it's a big game for him. And the road there centre forward, look, it's crucial, I think, for Tipp as well, that that middle channel, that if they get any opportunity at all, that they attack that middle channel and cause problems for Limerick. I think from a Limerick perspective, I think, sometimes I was watching the match there last day, and as I referenced there a while ago, like, there was big space for the Limerick's full forward line, and Kyle and Diarmuid were more conscious. Maybe it's because they're programmed in playing that way of going through the lines, or Kyle was trying to go down the wing all the time, where sometimes it was just the wing was blocked, turn back onto your right hand side, or in Diarmuid's pace, your left hand side, hit the ball off the back foot into that 70 yards, pocket of space that was there time and time again. But they opted, or maybe they're programmed into not doing it. But I think that really would open up that defence, or most defences who do push up. Like, I think it's key, like, when a team pushes up, just turn back, hit it off your back foot, and drill it into that space, and that's where the opportunities will arise. Like, but it'll be just interesting to see, will they, or have they worked on that, like, because in fairness to the lads John Kiley and the lads and Sean O'Donnell especially, and Paul Kinnerk, they're very, very sharp. I'm assuming that they will have seen that.
We'll have to put the next on the block here. I think Limerick have the more proven team. They're a wounded animal. It's do or die at this stage for them, and it could be if Cork win in Clare. I think you have to go for Limerick to win this game.
I'd be the same. I think 3 or 4. The question I put to you along with that, Mark, is do you think Limerick can win? And if they do win this weekend, what do you see the rest of the season looking like? Is this like a game that is like a release valve of they just start going into themselves and start playing after this if they can get a result?
I think Limerick's need is greater. And I think that was a factor against Clare. I think Clare went into the last game against Limerick knowing that they had to win. Simple as that. So I think Limerick have to win this, or else, like, as you say, if results go against them, and Cork win, if they lose, they're out of the championship. So I think maybe that's a factor. They certainly won't want for hunger, but like Tipperary in their home patch, and I think, in fairness, they've lost the last few games against Limerick in the championship. I think for Tipperary to be seen as serious contenders, they're going to have to put in a performance against Limerick on Sunday. But I just feel that just Limerick have maybe a little bit more at this juncture. I think Tipp are coming all right. I think they their style of play, their use of the ball is improved. There's more energy about them. When they get the chance, they're more direct now, and they're using the whole field, which is great. But I just feel Limerick, the need is greater. I think they're hurting after the last day. I think they know that they have to really get the show on the road with a good performance on Sunday. So I just give them the nod, but I don't think there will be a whole lot in it. And I think Limerick will be asked serious questions before they do come out of it.
And Mark, just before I let you go, who do you think is going to win that All-Ireland under-20 final between Cork and Offaly? And then also I'll ask you about Clare against Cork this weekend.
Well, I suppose the under-20 final, it'll be interesting. I suppose just looking at Cork first, right? The first thing I'll say about Cork is I haven't seen a team in a long time with as much pace. They're absolutely electric all over the field. So I think that's something that Offaly will have to deal with. But having said that, Offaly have some very good forwards. I think like Screeney, obviously everyone knows about Screeney. He was a great minor, and he was excellent again last night. But I think Ravenhill is an absolutely fantastic prospect. I think he's the really makers of a really, really good player. If Offaly can have the legs to stay with Cork at the back, I think, and force the Cork defenders to defend. I think a lot of the time, maybe in the first half especially, Clare withdrew and allowed Cork to kind of come out with the ball, cornerbacks coming out with the ball, taking the return and up the field. And it was only really when they had to do a bit of defending that you saw that there may be deficiencies there. So if Offaly can force them to defend and have the legs to stay with them, I give them a good chance. But I'd say at this stage, slight favourites to Cork. As for the match in Ennis, very difficult to win in Ennis. Very difficult. I think a lot will depend on if Cork are to win that. You need a kind of a day where the ball is flying around the place, loose and open. If you have scorching conditions, I'm not sure what the weather forecast is like at the weekend, but if that ball is flying around the place and it is open, Cork are very dangerous. They have a lot of pace all over the field, but I just have to give the nod to Clare based on home advantage. Unbeaten there for a while. And they are on a bit of a roll. They've won the minor. They were very unlucky to lose the under-21 final with about 10 or 12 minutes to go. It looked like they were winners. So there is a big amount of confidence in Clare, and I think they want to get back to a Munster final, and they know that they have to win on Sunday if they're to do that. So maybe Clare tentatively and Cork tentatively in the under-20s. I don't think there'll be a whole lot in either of the games, and wouldn't be surprised if they went the other way.
Good man, Mark. Write us off. We're only one to tight.
I'm not writing you off at all. I'm giving you a great chance. And the other thing is, for those of us who are around long enough, young Screeney there taking the freeze. My father was saying to me last night. He was very like Johnny Flaherty. To me, his style is the very same as Mark Corrigan in the 1980s.
Oh yeah,
it's almost a carbon copy.
Very much. Mark scored 3-7 in Leinster final one year. I can't remember the year now exactly, but they're very similar. Probably a bit more like Mark Corrigan, I'd say. Yeah. There's a blast from the past now. Mark was a selector of Offaly under Ollie Baker's time in 2012, and I remember we were on the ball wall, and like he must have had 20 or 30 years on me, and he still puts you to shame. Like if you have the wrists, you have the wrists.
Yeah. He was a great player, and Paddy, his brother, wasn't bad either. They were decent players, Yeah.
Brilliant players, yeah.
Well, look, Mark, you've set the scene brilliantly. Really appreciate you coming on, and hopefully you're unhappy after the match on Sunday.
Yeah, well, if you see me in Borrisalee anyway, right, you know I'm a happy man. Okay?
Yeah, I'll be avoiding the place.
All right,
Thanks very much, Mark. Really
Thanks, Mark.
it.
Thanks, man.
See you, lads.
Good man.
Brilliant to have Mark on there. Jeez, it is going to be some match, isn't it? I think it's going to be hell, fire, brimstone, whatever you associate with The Undertaker and the WWE.
Yeah. Kane, actually, that is. Yeah.
Was it?
I think Mark was nearly one of the first scoring wing backs, wasn't he? I'm just thinking back on his career. He was one of the first scoring wing backs. He nearly always put over a pint in most games. I think I hope Tipp really throw it down to Limerick, but you'd be very reluctant to write Limerick off. Basically, you just expect a bit of a bounce, don't you? I'd imagine so.
Yeah, but at the same time, if they're ever going to be vulnerable, this should be the time. And is there anything, like, I don't really think I asked you too much about these teams on the tactic board. Again, like Tipperary might withdraw Dan McCormick, and they might have the likes of Rowan and Matter sitting there or whatever. But like, do you think that would be disastrous from a Tipp point of view if they did that?
No, I don't think so necessarily. Dan gave us one of his best performances in a Tipp shirt. The last day, he's playing really well this year. I think I've never hidden my admiration for Will O'Donoghue, and I think if he can hit top gear, if he can boss the game, if he can make those 4 or 5 big plays, if he gets that fist pumping, Limerick will be hard bet. But if the likes of him is kind of kept quiet, if he's trying to plug a hole for Honan more often than not and not able to get in and get involved in a lot of play, Limerick could be in a bit of bother. I just expect things to go up a gear. I expect a lot of the big players, not being smart, I still think Gerard Hegarty will win an All-Star this year. Even though he's 2 games so far sent off, he probably He's barely played a combined game all told across the 2 games, but I still think he could easily end up with an All-Star and probably will. And I would be expecting him to really put the chest out at the weekend, expecting his body language to be a lot different as well. But it's fascinating. Like I expect Donoghue to go after Tynan to some extent as well, just based on that league final. Like that he wound up getting a 1-match suspension out of that as well. So like that'll be really interesting as well. I just think even the players been brought back to the 45 now for the throw-in just leaves the 4 players even more kind of isolated. It makes it even juicier almost now, doesn't it?
It does indeed. And I see River Power is saying here that British flag up in the top corner, when I put up the map, is fair annoying. Well, unfortunately, I don't own the website. I can't change what structure they have. And it's obviously on a rugby field here. So we're just kind of working on what we have so we can display it on the screen. But this man here, Peter Casey, I think he's going to be that's a key matchup. You'd imagine Johnny Ryan, like the league semi-final, he'll be on him again. Seamus Kennedy's had a massive year for Tipperary. He's been an all-star form as far as I'm concerned. But the reason I have Brian O'Mara on Keane Lynch here is even just from the Fitzgibbon Cup a couple of years ago, and maybe Lynch wasn't at 100%, but Brian O'Mara had a very good game on him and turned him over a couple of times. Like Barrett will have to make sure he doesn't get caught out in front of Gillan, jumping on his back. And obviously, he has that capacity now to score goals on site. Seamus Flanagan, he scored 3 goals already in this championship. Should have been sent off against Waterford, but his form has been very, very good. And then it's like, can Conor Stakelum, Alan Tynan, McCormack, can all of these lads put in the sort of physical 70 minutes that Tipperary will require to get the result here? Like, I'm not ruling out Tipperary from winning this game. I just feel like it's going to be probably a puck of a ball. Tipperary will have to, I suppose, weather that third quarter that they really have struggled with the last couple of years. But I think you just can't go against Limerick in this, even though I think Tipp won't be that far off.
No, there's not enough. I know they were beaten the last day, but they're going to have to be beaten a couple of times before you're going against them anyway, confidently, aren't you? Realistically. It's amazing. We're well into the show and we're just talking about Munster, and that's just the way it is at the moment, isn't it? Like there just is not that same intrigue with the Leinster games. We obviously have Kilkenny and Dublin this weekend, but I just did a piece for the programme for the weekend, and looking back and thinking the last 7 times Kilkenny have played Dublin in Championship, Kilkenny have won. They drew with them in 2013 and beat them in 2013. Hadn't beaten them in Championship since 1942 before that. So it's a massive, they've beaten them once in, 81 years? Do you know what I mean? Like that's realistically what you're dealing with coming into this weekend. And similar with Wexford and Westmeath, albeit with the draw last weekend.
Yeah.
You'd be very surprised if there's going to be a shock there. And similar with Galway as well. Kind of looks like potentially with Antrim that they had their chance the first day against Dublin. Kind of half took it and didn't take it, got something out of the game. But you'd probably be expecting the favourites to win handily enough. With Kilkenny and Dublin, obviously, probably be a score or 2 between them. But you probably still think Kilkenny are going to win by 5 or 6 based on all known evidence so far.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of decent matchups in this Kilkenny against Dublin game. And look, I'm fancying the Cats as well. But I think I'm thinking that because Paddy Smith did quite well last year, or was it the year before, on TJ Reid, he might go and take him from the get-go. And Smith's a very physical player, a very good athlete. I think Owen O'Donnell could actually be moved onto Owen Cody because he's been the main man. He scored, 10 points in the championship this year. He's looked really good at different stages. Donald Burke, will he go centre forward in the hope that maybe Richie Reid will be forced to mark him? Or does it at least force Kilkenny to bring somebody else back as a man marker? Are we going to start to see a little bit of Mikey Carey fairly soon as he tries to build his way back up? I think, Keane O'Sullivan has to have a huge game for Dublin. Keane Boland has to have a massive game. Ronan Hayes is out, so maybe Paul Crummy has to have a big game. But there's just too many areas where Dublin have to have massive games, just even break even.
Do Kilkenny send Mikey Butler after Donald Burke?
Yeah, they might do. Yeah, that's probably not the worst call, yeah.
I'd say they might because mobility-wise, and he's just not going to give him the yard. He tried. Now he did try I know this sounds a bit mad. I thought he tried to do a bit too much hurling against Galway. I know that sounds a bit crazy, but he kind of got punished a couple of times. He got a score, I think, that day, but I thought he was trying to do a bit too much. But if you gave him that man marking job, realistically, if Mikey Butler keeps Donald Burke to 2 points from play, Dublin win by 6 to 7. You'd imagine, unless a lot of guys step up. So I probably think, if you're looking at Darach Cork and David Blanchfield, do they suit on Donald Burke? Not necessarily. I think it probably would suit them to send Mikey Butler after him and follow him everywhere he goes. And I don't think you could see, if Mikey Butler was tracking him, I don't think you could see Donald Burke striking too many balls, standing by himself on his left-hand side, to put it to you that way.
Yeah, he does have pace to get away from lads too,
Yeah.
though. I think that's probably underrated about him. Like, Galway haven't met Antrim since the 2008 qualifiers. Neil McManus, I presume he's out because he limped off and he looked in bad order the last day out. So he's a big loss there. You're going to need Conal Cunning, Keelan Malloy, James McNaughton, these lads kind of shooting the lights out. For Galway, I think it's more like form. I mean, they battered Westmeath the last day, so it's hard to really tell who's flying and who's not because it's just such an overwhelming victory. But like Conor Whelan, after being taken off at Nolan Park against Kilkenny, he probably needs to start showing serious kind of form, especially coming into the bigger teams later on. Same with Conor Cooney. Nyland has obviously been popping over scores. Concannon has been looking quite good. Westmeath and Wexford drew last year, but I think Wexford, after losing to Dublin, they're really going to have to come out firing here. We'll go quickly through the football games this weekend. There's so many on. But like you said, we're going to be focused on football a lot in the weeks coming down the line. There's no real massive jeopardy here because only one team is getting knocked out of each group. So it kind of feels a little bit like, why would you focus too much on this? Let's let a week pass and see.
Yeah, we won't lose the big name, Shane. Like, we can't, like, if we lose the big name, they deserve to go. They'll have to lose 2 games and maybe a draw. Like, it's a bit of a mad kind of system. I know they're trying to get more games, but like, there's some amount of games for 4 teams to exit the championship.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It takes all the jeopardy out of it. It's like the opposite of the Munster Championship.
Yeah, well, basically, it's like you want it to be super 4s, essentially, 4 groups of 4, but 2 have to go through from each group. There has to be that element of jeopardy. There has to be a good team losing out. And I can't get over the fact that, you know, the third place team has another game to stay in it or whatever. It's a funny kind of a structure, to be honest with you. But I do think Martin Bretney had it in the Independent the other day. 94% of the hurling championship is going to be played by the end of May. So, like, I think we'll stay predominantly focused on hurling for another good while.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's just quickly run through some of the matches that are on this weekend. Kerry are against Mayo in Group 1. So Kerry so far battered Tipperary 25 points to 5, and also had it very easy against Clare in the Munster final, 5-14 to 15. Then obviously Mayo, they've had some. They've only had one performance actually after winning the league. That was a 2-8 to 10-point defeat to Roscommon. So they've met plenty of times over the recent years. So I think it'll be a good game, but there's not that much at stake.
There's not the buzz around it like there should be when those two teams meet, really.
Galway are against Tyrone, and I'm looking forward to seeing if Matthew Tierney can keep the form going that has him hitting 2-9 so far in a couple of games. We haven't seen Tyrone since they lost to Monaghan, and Monaghan were obviously beaten well enough then the next day out. Darragh Canavan, Darren McCurry, Matty Donnelly, obviously they have good players. Like, I think the last time they played in the championship, Pádraig Joyce top scored on one side. This was 2004, and Brian Dooher who's obviously the other manager. Yeah. He was captain on the other side. Then Clare against Donegal, that's in Group 4. I think this is one game where there's a bit of jeopardy because Donegal look all at sea. Obviously, there was the management situation and all that kind of stuff. But Clare, are they, can they recover from that Munster final defeat here?
It was respectable enough, to be fair. It was probably what we all thought was going to happen. But I said about Tipperary smelling blood. Clare have to smell blood here, win this game, and they have a great chance of getting through. And like Donegal are on their knees at the moment. I see Aidan O'Rourke wouldn't do media again this week. Donegal there's a lot of funny stuff kind of going on there at the moment. There's a lot of stuff that people don't seem to want to talk about in the public domain. Donegal they have a bit of a mountain to climb to turn things around, and obviously they're not facing a Division 3 side or something like that. They're facing a really competitive Division 2 side who had a brilliant win over Cork earlier on this year. I think Colin Collins and Clare will smell blood here, and I think they might just do a job by a score. Yeah,
and then Sligo against Kildare. Sligo put up a decent performance against Galway in the final of Connacht, 220 to 12 points. It was never all that competitive. But Kildare, I mean, they beat Wicklow the first day out. They put up a good performance against Dublin, but they couldn't see it out, losing by 14 points to 12. That's going to be a big missed opportunity for them. But at least they can feel like, okay, maybe we can compete with the top teams again. We don't need to be so down in the mountain negative, and maybe we can have a good championship from here. So you would fancy them to beat Sligo, but if they lost there, it's going to be a fairly miserable last few games. And I'll just read out the fixtures that are coming from the Talition Cup round 2. London against Cavan, Carlow, Limerick, Longford, Wicklow, Wexford, Antrim, Leitrim, Fermanagh, Waterford against Meath, Leisure against Offaly, and Tipperary are against Down. That's the only Sunday fixture there. There'll actually be there'll be a big crowd in there for the second half.
There will, yeah. And the thing about adding the group stages of the Talition Cup is it means that people probably aren't as dialed into it yet as maybe they would have been last year, where there were knockout games from the very, very start. I think people will probably only get dialed in around the round 3 games. And again, from what I understand, there's not that many teams exiting the race at that stage. And there won't really be any big hitters gone at that stage either.
Yeah, do you have a quick quiz there?
I actually do, really, really quickly, yeah.
Yeah. Joe Butler's saying disappointing preview of Leinster Hurling Championship, but there's not that much at stake. There's 3 teams at 5. There's a lot of foregone conclusion fixtures this weekend, so we will be doing more on them as it ramps up.
Yeah, and Leinster will completely take over next weekend. Whatever you say about the fixture makers, they've set it up brilliantly for the last weekend. We're going to have a potential relegation match, and we're going to have 4 teams playing for 3 spots. So we'll definitely ham that up all next week. But I had a question, and I'm actually forgetting it now, but I have 3 here. These are all Ireland Senior Hurling Final top scorers, okay?
Okay.
So these are all Senior Hurling Final top scorers. So who was the top scorer in the 2017 final, the 2003 final, and the 2001 final? So all Ireland Senior Hurling Final top scorers, 2017, 2003, and 2001. So if you name me someone that wasn't playing these games,
who was 03? Okay, I'm probably. Oh wait, no, was that okay? Right. So I'm going to go with Pádraig Mahoney.
Correct.
I'm going to go for double 17. Eddie Brennan for 2003.
Nope.
Damn, I was going to go with Taggy, but he was 06, wasn't it, when he went to town?
Yes, that was 06. It was another forward, and it was all from play. 03. We'll come to that in a second. 2001.
Brian O'Mara?
Okay, so 2003 was Martin Comerford, 1-4.
Okay.
And 2001 was Eugene Cloonan, 1-5.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah.
Jeez, that's a tough one. That was a tough one now.
Yeah, they're tricky. But you're listening, I'm not going to ask easy questions.
Yeah. Okay, well, look, you have to run away. That's why it's a little bit shorter at the end of the show today. But we'll be chatting to you again on Monday. What game are you going to?
I am going to Westmeath and Wexford on Sunday, but I'll be looking at loads of other bits and pieces. And just the final note, up the faithful, we're back.
Right. We'll chat to you again next week. So just a reminder, if you want to get a club fundraiser at your club, go ahead and email events@ourgame.ie and we'll sort that out for you. We had a brilliant one at Rowan Moore not so long ago. If you want to get the audio podcast, go to patreon.com/ourgame. And don't forget to visit ourstore.ie for all our official merchandise.